There we go. Welcome to the Hinckley Institute. My name is Rory Stewart. The Hinckley Institute of Politics is a nonpartisan institute at the University of Utah. The Hinckley provides an array of transformative experiences for students through internships, forums, and classes. Hinckley forums seek to foster public discourse and civil debate on the most current and pressing issues, bringing in local, national, and international thought leaders. Today's forum is on the topic of voter education and voter rights. We are grateful for the partnership with the ACLU of Utah on this event. The ACLU of Utah operates through public education, legal action, and legislative and community advocacy to enhance and defend the civil rights and freedoms of everyone living in or visiting Utah. They are an inclusive, nonpartisan, statewide organization powered by our members, donors, and volunteers. Today we will hear from one of our fellow students and current ACLU of Utah intern, Suvam Pocarel. Okay, sorry. Suvam is currently a second-year political science and economics student at the University of Utah, serving as the advocacy and campaigns intern at ACLU Utah, specifically working on the organization's midterm 2026 voter rights campaign, First Amendment advocacy, and will be working on various organizational tasks and advocacy work through the 2026 legislative session. Suvam believes in the protection of civil liberties for all and hopes to inspire younger generations to get involved in policy and advocacy work. Please join me in welcoming our guests.
Perfect. Okay, let me just make sure this is on. Is the mic on also, Nick? Perfect. So today we're going to be talking about knowing your voting rights, especially because 2026 midterm elections are coming. And I just want to first shout out my advisor, Allison Griffith, who is a community engagement director. She has been a central part of the internship program that I am part of. So I'm part of the Community Advocacy Fellowship, which is through the Tanner Human Rights Fellowship that you can do here at the University of Utah. I definitely encourage you to apply. I think they have 2 more days to apply. So, hey, you could also be an intern for ACLU of Utah. Allison has been a critical part of the campaign side of things. So if you're looking at advocacy work the ACLU of Utah does, that is always going to be through her. She has also been an integral part in terms of helping me with these Know Your Rights trainings, compiling them, and I'm also working on an op-ed to talk about freedom of speech, which will be delivered in the future. But I just want to say thank you to her. And before I start, I want to just give her time to talk.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allison Griffith. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Director of Community Engagement. And I want to thank you all for being here and sharing in this opportunity. Suvam has done an amazing job of taking our Know Your Rights materials and putting it into a training and session that is most helpful for you in being able to digest the material and put it to use. As he said, I am the one who runs our campaigns program, and if you are interested in being a part of anything that we're working on, come see me afterwards or sign up at our resource table. And I will turn it back to Suvam. Thank you.
In terms of things that are happening over here, we have a table here, and we have a lot of stickers, which I use for my water bottle, so if you ever want to get that, that's great. We also have different Know Your Rights trainings from immigration as well there. So if you want to know your immigration rights, especially when interacting with ICE, there's a card over there. It has a translation of, I also think, Spanish as well. So if you are looking for that, that's a great resource. And there's also our volunteer sign-up sheet there as well, and a trifold that I made for specifically the University of Utah students and about your voting rights and just some information that I'm going to be talking about here so you can also retain the information. So with that, I'm going to start. Who am I? I think the introduction was really great, but I am a second-year economics and political science student. I'm really interested in working on civil liberties and working to protect our civil liberties. So that's why the ACLU of Utah was a great organization for me. And again, I'm going to be working on the First Amendment issues, working on our voter rights campaign, which this is a part of, this event will be part of. And lastly, I'm also looking at policy here too. So 2026 legislative session is going to come. There's a lot of things that the ACLU will be looking at and keeping an eye for our volunteers, but also for our work as well. I want to give a disclaimer here. Anything I say here today is not legal advice. And I also want to give another disclaimer here, because if you're a college student, you can register through two routes. You can register in your home state, which might be different depending on where you are, and your home district. So if you are, let's say, I am from Logan, I could register to vote in Logan, Utah. However, I can also register to vote here at the University of Utah. So all the information I'm going to be giving is specific for people that are in Salt Lake City, Utah, and it's specific for if you are registering to vote near the U. If you are registered to vote in a different state or a different county and district, these rules might look different. And another thing I want to say is if you need legal assistance, you should contact an attorney for legal advice and representation. And again, this is not going to be legal advice, but this is just more a guide to see where you need to go for specific information about voting. So about the ACLU, I think Rory did a great job of explaining what it is, but it's American Civil Liberties Union. We've had chapter offices in almost all of the 50 states, and it's really cool because the ACLU, I'm sure you all think of it as like a national organization, but until I would say pretty recently, I didn't even know that there were state offices of it, because you think of an organization and a nonpartisan nonprofit as just kind of this large group. But there's a lot of state offices that are also doing a lot of great work. What does the ACLU of Utah like to focus on? Again, we have a legal team, we have public education, and we talk about advocacy work that we like to do on a state level. So there's a lot of great ways to get involved here, and there's a lot of different factors and aspects that the ACLU focuses on that ACLU Utah also takes. You'd probably think of cases here as well, legal cases, but there's not only just that, there's also advocacy work that we also do. Again, I want to stress here that we are an inclusive, nonpartisan statewide organization powered by our members, donors, and volunteers. So again, a lot of the information we're giving to you has to be nonpartisan, and not only that, we are here to just educate you about what rights you have. It's not necessarily through a partisan lens, but it's through an educational lens. So to start off, what is happening in 2026? Midterm elections. All 435 members of the US House of Representatives are up for election. What does this mean for you? Everyone is going to have an opportunity to vote for their House members, whether some House members are up for re-election or there's a completely new slate of members as well. And I'll list your specific congressional candidates as well throughout the speech. But again, just make sure that you are applying this to your specific district, because this can change based on your voter registration. In Utah, there will also be elections for local city races, city council, and state legislature offices. So I encourage you to look at your district and what your district is specifically going to be doing races for. But let me tell you something, local races can come down to a handful of votes, so they do matter, which is gonna be my next slide. So why vote? I think, as college students, it's like, well, what is my vote going to do? Why should I be participating in elections? It's really important because voting in elections helps lay groundwork to protect against threats for civil rights. I put this in specifically through the ACLU perspective because ultimately you are showing us what you believe is important for civil rights and civil liberties. And you're kind of guiding a lot of our advocacy work. If we don't have younger generations that are willing to vote and participate in these elections, our work might not be as connected with what the people actually want. While presidential elections are important, and we had one last year, not last year, 2 years ago, sorry, midterm elections are just as important, and even last year we had municipal elections. These are all important elections that shape who is representing you. Local races are sometimes, again, decided by a handful of votes. They're not just decided by, thousands of votes with a gap. It's usually something like 10 to 15 votes. I've even heard smaller numbers throughout municipal elections. So it's really important that you do vote, and not only that you are considering that the impact you're making on your vote, especially on a local race, is significant. I also want to lay out something. Voting shows that right now in the 2024 presidential election, ages 18 to 29 were the group that were the least to vote out of all the age groups. We are the future. We absolutely should be voting for what we believe in, and what we should be vocalizing that. This is just one route to get there. And again, the ACLU of Utah has a lot of ways where we get people engaged, but this is the first stepping stone to be that person that says, hey, this is what I believe in, and this is how I'm going to do that. Voting is just one of those routes, but a very important route. So who can vote in Utah? Again, specific to the state of Utah, it's a United States citizen. They need to be at least 18 years old on or before the next election, a resident of Utah for at least 30 days before the election, and they need to be not currently incarcerated for a felony conviction. These are just some basic guiders to just show you, hey, you probably are able to vote, and ultimately, if you are worried about, oh, who can vote and who can't, this kind of lays the framework for it, but I will always suggest you go to utah.vote.gov to see where it specifically has information about who can vote and what specifically they have in terms of exceptions for that. And I will list that website throughout the presentation. So registering to vote. I think a lot of this information might seem like, oh, wait, yeah, absolutely, very simple. But registering to vote can sometimes be very inaccessible, and I want to make sure that you have that information for yourself. You can obviously register to vote online. You need to register by 5 p.m., 11 calendar days before the election. You can also register to vote online, vote.utah.gov. You must have a valid driver's license or state ID that it lists your current address. Now, I want to list this because if you are college students, you probably are moving around a lot on a yearly basis. You need to update your voter registration if you want to get that mail-in ballot, which makes it a lot easier to vote, especially for a college student. In person, there are two ways you can do it. You can do same-day voter registration, which I'll talk about. You can also register in person in advance of election day at the county clerk's office if you are registering in person. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but what I've noticed especially is easier for younger voters is voting and registering to vote online. And you can change your information there. You can also change your party affiliation there as well. There's a lot of information that you can do through online. But again, if you're always curious, you can also go in person. A lot of the times, the county clerk's office is more than willing to help you. So how to vote? If you are an active register, how to vote mail-in ballots. So this is specific for mail-in ballots. If you are an active registered voter, you will automatically receive a ballot in the mail. I want to note there is a change that will happen in 2029, and I will be discussing this in terms of legislation that affects you as voters. But ultimately, just for 2026, remember, if you are an active registered voter, you will receive a mail-in ballot. Hopefully, if it's an updated address or an address that you obviously are constantly going to. Your return ballot must arrive at the county clerk's office or a secure drop box by 8 p.m. on election day. It's important because, again, you want to make sure your vote counts. After you have checked in everything with the mail-in ballots, the best that you would want to happen is make sure that goes through. You don't want to waste your time. And again, it's very important that you track where your ballot is, which I'll talk about later. Your ballot, and then if you're not registered, your county clerk must receive your registration form at least 11 days before the election in order to vote by mail. If you do miss that 11-day marker, I want to say you still can vote, but you're just not able to do mail-in ballots, which I know is the easiest for college students, and it just makes it more accessible. So how to vote in person. So check your voter registration status. That's the best thing I can recommend, just to make sure all the information is accurate. I always do this no matter which way I'm voting, just to make sure, hey, is that address accurate? I've moved around a lot. Or checking your essential election deadlines. This is also important if you have primary election dates and then general election dates. Those are very different, and they have two different voter registration dates. if you missed the deadline to vote by mail, you can still register and vote in person during early voting or on election day. So this is something I actually personally did in the 2024 election. I did opt in for mail-in ballots, but I didn't get my mail-in ballot, and I think it's because I put the wrong address there. Instead, I just voted in person at the University of Utah at the Marriott Library. The line was actually not that long. I think I waited maybe like 30 to 40 minutes. I brought, and I'll bring this up again, I brought a proof of residency and my state ID. So it's really easy. And again, voting in person just leaves a lot of the work that you would have to do online, just all in person, which can take a little bit longer. So again, both are great valid options, but if you're looking for one that is just more time efficient, I would definitely recommend mail-in ballots. Okay, identification, what is necessary? So voting in person, if you are registered to vote, you can show one valid photo ID or two forms of non-photo ID that combine to prove your name and current address. So what I had to bring when I went to the Marriott Library is one of my envelopes that just had my name and my address in it, and I had to bring my driver's license. Again, I will talk about what forms of identification are most important, but for now, just knowing that in person, you'll have to probably bring your envelope and your driver's license is gonna be important. Voting by mail. You do not need to provide identification on your mail ballot until 2029. I keep on stressing this because we're gonna talk about some legislation that is going to affect this. If you have a driver's license, state identification card, or social security number, you should include the last 4 digits on your mail ballot where appropriate. If you don't have an ID, just sign your mail ballot so officials can verify your signature and make sure it's a consistent signature. There is always going to be some sort of not always, but there is a lot of common practices in when you send your ballot, the signature might not necessarily match and you might need to get that verified. And we'll talk about that, but just make sure it is a consistent signature you have done for a while. So proper forms of identification, there's a lot, and I really encourage you to look at vote.utah.gov because this is only, I wanna say, only like a few examples from the many that I saw. I could have included them all, but I think it's really important to just know the main primary ones that you will be using as a student. A Utah driver's license, if you are driving to campus and everything and you have lived in Utah, you probably are going to be having a Utah driver's license. ID card issued by the state of Utah or the US government, Utah concealed carry permit, a US passport, a tribal ID card, which does not require a photograph, and a currently valid US military ID card. Now, this was a few of many, and I really encourage you to look at vote.utah.gov because there's so many examples, but the primary, I think, would be the first 4 that most people are using for proper forms of identification. But again, all of these are valid under the vote.utah.gov website. Okay, where can you vote as a student? So I first want to make sure you know what opportunities come up in terms of registering to vote. If you're not registered to vote, a lot of the times there will be tabling opportunities that are hosted by the Hinckley or student government, or maybe a party club in terms of college Democrats or college Republicans. So you can also always register to vote there, and they'll usually have the county clerk's county clerk voter identification form that you can fill out to just say, hey, this is where I live, this is my identification. Usually they'll ask you for your state driver's license number if you have a Utah state driver's license. And again, choosing where to register to vote is completely up to you. You can register to vote here at the University of Utah because when elections happen, you're probably mid-semester. So you're here for at least 30 days. But you can also register to vote at your home state, if that is where your family is, or just a different city in Utah. You must have lived in Utah for at least 30 days immediately before the election. This is really important, but again, if elections are happening in November, we can just infer that you have been here for at least half a fall semester. Can I vote if I am new to Utah or do not have a Utah's driver's license? Yes. I think a lot of college students choose to vote in their home state. But what I really encourage you guys to do is if you are here, and if you are a student here for 4 years, you're going to be affected by a lot of the legislation and policies that are happening on a statewide level in Utah. So if you are wanting to use your voice in Utah lens, and especially since you're actively going to be interacting with a lot of the legislation and policies that Utah enacts, I think it's a great way to just, register to vote. And also, you must be a resident of Utah for at least 30 days. Registering to vote online requires a valid Utah driver's license or ID, but you can still register in person by filling out a paper form and mailing or delivering it. When we're doing these register to vote tables, a lot of organizations do, you can actually just give them that paper back and they'll actually be submitting it to the county clerks. Now, the only exception is if it's 11 calendar days before the election, I would just encourage you to ask them, hey, are you going to be able to get it in time? Or if you are doing it yourself, just make sure you get it in before that deadline. Okay, so we're now going to talk about policy affecting your voting rights. There's a lot of different ones to look at, and I'm, again, making this on a Utah state level. I want to stress that because this legislation is not going to affect you if you're not in Utah. House Bill HB 300 passed by the Utah State Legislature. This was in 2025, the legislative session, what it affected was the vote by mail system, and it was going to be affecting it in 2029. Until then, all registered voters will still receive a ballot by mail, but what this does is it doesn't automatically enroll you if you are registered to vote in mail-in ballots. So now you kind of have this extra step that you have to do after 2029. Now, again, this legislation, I would say, is not necessarily the most clear in terms of how specifically it's going to affect you. In terms of what we infer is going to happen in the 2026 legislative session is I think it's going to make it a lot more clear what the policy looks like and what you can expect more as a Utah voter, which is why I say, please look at what's actively happening in our Utah State Legislature and just keep yourself informed because it could change. And even the advice I'm giving right now is probably subject to change. Another thing is after 2029, you'll need to sign up to keep on receiving a mail-in ballot. And there's probably going to be more voter ID requirements. Again, they're not really specific, so I can't really say, hey, this is specifically what's going to happen. But I know that they were discussing a lot of specific things about making sure you have a state driver's license and putting that number into those voter registration packets. Throughout the 2025 legislative session, there were also many discussions about ending same-day registration. It is important to see what will be discussed and passed in the 2026 legislative session. Again, there's been discussions. There was actually one bill that had to get amended probably 6 to 7. Oh my goodness, that was awful. But a lot of times that it had to be amended a lot of times, and ultimately it didn't even get passed with the original language. The original language was, hey, we're going to end same-day registration. They went through a lot of lobbying groups and discussed it with a lot of lobbying groups. The main sponsors of the bill didn't even get to implement that language into it. Ultimately, the language got really watered down that there's not really an effect on what happened to Utah State voters, but it's still really important for you to know. Okay. Another thing that I want to talk about, which I think if you have seen like local news, you've probably heard about, which is redistricting and Proposition 4. This is really important, and I'm just going to give the timeline because it's not necessarily, it's important to understand what is happening right now in terms of 2026 midterm elections, and especially if you're in this district. So there was a ballot measure that basically 30% of Utah voters voted yes for. What this was Proposition 4 created an independent redistricting committee. And this was in 2018. And then in 2020, the legislature passes SB 200, which basically weakens Proposition 4. Legislature in 2021 ignores the commission, the independent commission that was assigned through Proposition 4, and passes its own congressional map. So now there's not an independent redistricting commission creating a map, it's still the legislature. In 2022, the League of Women Voters and other allies sued. This is important because another ally is going to be Better Boundaries, which I have a picture of there on the slideshow of just what they were saying during that time. And in 2024, which was more recently, the Utah Supreme Court says legislators can't gut citizen reforms without a strong reason. Last year, which very recently, we got a ruling from the judge, which was Judge Gibson, which ruled that SB 200 was unconstitutional and strikes down the 2021 map and orders for new fair maps for the 2026 midterm elections. October, November 2025, again, I had to add this newly because when I made this initially, this hadn't happened, but what happened was the legislature passes a new map. However, the court rejects this map and the judge adopts a new map proposed by the plaintiffs. And the plaintiffs being League of Women Voters and Better Boundaries and some other allies there as well. So just know this relatively, it's not really important in terms of the timeline, but it's important because this is going to affect how you vote and where you vote in 2026. So what does this mean for you? I have the new map right there. District 1 is the one that you would be registered to vote in if you choose to register to vote here at the University of Utah or near. So there's going to be new congressional districts. If you are in D1, there may be a Democratic primary. That's just for you to note, because there's going to be 2 deadlines you'll be looking for, not 1. It also changes your representatives. So right now, filing for U.S. House candidates ends March 13th, 2026. I've included some of the members and some of the people who have announced their congressional races. But again, I just want to stress that there are going to be other candidates that are announcing that have not yet. Right now, if you look at District 1, your House of Representative member is going to be Blake Moore in District 1. But for the new, for 2026, it may be different. Okay, so candidates in District 1 specific to U of U, if you are registered to vote here, this is going to be applied to you. If you are registered to vote in a different city or state, it's obviously going to be different. Right now, we have these candidates. I've also listed their party affiliation, and again, I just put this here to just so you know, hey, these are the candidates you'll be possibly voting for. And yeah, it's great to read up on them. I think it's a really great opportunity to directly apply yourself to a congressional race and say, hey, what are my values and which candidate falls with these values? So with that, I'm also going to be talking about language access. This is really important because there's a lot of, I would say, a lot of policies that are actually protecting you in terms of what sort of accessibility you get when voting. The first thing I want to talk about is every eligible voter deserves full and equal access to elections, including the ability to read and understand their ballot and voting materials. This is actually outlined by the Section 208 of the Voting Rights Act, which allows voters to experiencing blindness and other disabilities or the inability to read or write to receive assistance at the polls. It's also important that there's a little bit of exception to that, because as long as the person assisting is not their employer or an agent of the employer or an office or agent of the voters union, they're able to assist you, but there is a little bit of a restriction on who can assist these people. Voters experiencing language barriers may obtain assistance through Section 208. People providing assistance are not required to be U.S. citizens, registered to vote, or of legal age. This is important to know because, again, if you do know someone who has struggles with accessibility in terms of disabilities or even struggling to read or write, it's really great if you can give them these resources and say, hey, we have a lot of protections here for people to have better accessibility when you go to the polls. I put this little infographic of language access is voter access, and I think and it's from the ACLU of Utah. I think it really represents what we're trying to do here, which is important because it's not just about giving everyone the right to vote, it's also about giving them the accessibility to go to those polls and have those opportunities. So again, I put that up there. If you want to look more into the language access as voter access infographic and website we have, you can look at aclu.utah I think utah.com, ACLU-utah.com, or perfect. And you'll be able to access a lot of this information. With that, I'm also going to be talking about kind of one thing that we've done in Utah specifically to help with voter access. I think it's really important that we give examples of what the organization has done in the past. So we're going to be talking about San Juan County, which is a settlement agreement first reached after a 2016 lawsuit. It required the county to provide in-person voting services and election information in Navajo, which is really an important accessibility issue for a lot of Native Americans. A lot of Native Americans actually have a lot of accessibility issues in terms of, oh, well, they don't have proper identification. Usually they have those tribal cards, which is why now we have, for valid forms of identification, that tribal card without the photograph. But again, it's important that we understand how each community has different voting access and how that is going to affect their policy. This also means that you have the right to help with registration, your ballot, and voting questions, all in your language. This is important because if you're talking to someone who is maybe bilingual and they're more stronger in their native language, it is important to let them know that, hey, you can still vote if you are a United States citizen and you have those qualifications, and we can get you to a place where you have that access that you need to understand where you can vote, how you can vote, and what is the best process for you to get your voice out there. This agreement, originally set to end after the 2024 election, has been extended, protecting your right to accessible voting through 2028. This is really important because there is legislation and policies and other different things that are protecting you as a voter from voter registration, making sure that you have accessibility. So it's not just about affecting your mail-in ballots, it's about protecting you as well. Important tips. I think these are really important because a lot of the times we can overlook these as college voters, and I definitely didn't even know in my first election that I voted in, which was 2 years ago at this point. So the first thing is no stamp. If you don't have a stamp and you are mailing in your ballot, what will happen? Again, I'm going to preface this by saying it's in Utah because I am not sure what the policy looks like for each state. And that would, again, it's so different each state that it's important that you look it up. But for Utah, there's no problem if you don't have a stamp. You are actually able to send your ballot without a stamp, and every county will cover the cost of postage, whether prepaid or not. You can also return your ballot to a secure drop box in your county. So you don't necessarily have to worry about, hey, I don't have a stamp, what do I do? You can just drop it off or you can send it in. If you are voting by mail using the signature verification method until 2029, use a consistent signature for your mail ballot. I stress this because I feel like I've had a lot of personal experience with, hey, my ballot didn't even get considered. And I was like, oh, what was the reasoning? And a lot of the times it's because of signature verification. Making sure you have a consistent signature is really important. And your signature on your mail ballot will be compared to your signature on file with your voter registration record to confirm your identity. So this is where it can be a little bit inconsistent, and the next tip is going to be important. Tracking your ballot. After you vote, visit vote.utah.gov and check your ballot to ensure it was counted. Can I vote if I'm in line and the polls are closing? Yes. This actually almost happened to me. I think I voted before 8 p.m., but I was pretty close towards the end because one, I was like, oh, the line will dim down. It did not dim down. But what I did and what I was told is you can stay in line even after 8 p.m. if you were in line before 8 p.m. So don't just go out of the polls, out of the line, because you assume your vote won't be counted. It will. Just stay in the line. I know it is a long line, but you still have the right to vote, even if you are there past 8 p.m. It's just more about when you were at the line, which most people are there before. It's just the time that really gets to them, and they assume that their vote won't be counted. It will. So another thing I want to talk about, and I think it's really important because if there is an experience with a problem in voting, who can I reach out to for help? I first want to talk about what sort of cases that this could even apply to, which is going to be voter intimidation and accessibility issues. We talked about accessibility a lot, And obviously, there's a lot of different resources and advocacy measures, but who can you go to for direct information saying, hey, what can I do now? There's actually different languages that you can go through for phone, and then there's also an online website, which is 866ourvote.org. Voter intimidation is really something that we are trying to make sure is not happening, but there are a lot of resources out there for people who are experiencing that and able to talk to the right people for it. A lot of these phone numbers are also in different languages. I've listed some of them here. So we have English, Spanish, Asian languages, Arabic, and online as well if they feel more comfortable doing that. So with that, I want to kind of give a preface to what I mean by how to get involved with the ACLU of Utah. As I've discussed throughout this presentation, there's a lot of different things happening in terms of legislation, policy, and what is happening in the future. It's important for you guys to understand that it's important to have your voice in what's happening right now, and there's different ways to do it. It's not a one-size-fits-all. There's actually multiple ways you can get involved. So the first thing that I will say for voting, and I'm going to include an event that we're having in the next slide, but there's a lot of ways to get involved in voter rights if that's what you're interested in. One thing that is happening right now is in 2026, the legislative session, we are anticipating a lot of things changing. We want you guys to come out as a volunteer and join a call to action, advocate on our social media, and host an educational event like this. I'm doing a Know Your Voting Rights training right now. You are also able to do this if you are a volunteer as well. There's also a lot of fundraising support that we would love to have, and we also help with rallies and stuff like that, and there's a lot of events that we do on the Capitol as well, which are really fun. And again, there's so many ways to get involved at the ACLU, especially if you're someone who's like, hey, I want to get more involved. I want to make sure that I am getting more involved in things that I'm passionate about, not just things that I'm doing just for a resume builder. It's a resume builder for sure, but it's also an opportunity to work on something you're passionate about. And we have different issue areas right now. We have immigration, we have voter rights, we have disability, LGBTQ rights. So I don't want, and freedom of speech. I don't want you to think that it's just one or the other. There's a lot of things we can work on. And again, as a volunteer, you have a lot more freedom and creative freedom into what you want to work on. It's not just one thing. I have the QR code here, but if you want to go through our tabling material as well, which I encourage you to get some stickers and some swag as well, it has a lot of the information for how to get involved. If you sign up there, you'll also be able to receive a lot of our action alerts and our volunteer trainings as well, which is important to help us know where you're interested and just connect with you. But that QR code, you can also do it as well. Action alerts, I would say, are the best thing that I have received as an individual because it tells me what is happening currently. We have one for 287G agreements, and I really like that because I don't necessarily have to go individually and see what is happening, especially in Utah. I can just look through the ACLU calls to action and say, hey, this is what you need to do. Want to come up and go to a protest with us about this? Great. That's a great way to get involved. There's smaller things, but there's also larger things if you're interested. Okay, so this is something that is happening actually this weekend if you want to come. It is January 17th, which is this Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It is a voting and democracy summit. It's really great. I would recommend if you guys are really interested in the voter rights issues, which again, I've talked about different aspects of it, different ways to get involved. And again, you might think it's a very simple thing, but a lot of the times with voting, I think there's a misunderstanding of the accessibility of it and ultimately how it can affect you. As I talked about with tracking your ballot, sometimes you might not even know that your ballot didn't even get counted. Who knows? And it's important that you track those things and you're also advocating for everyone else's voting rights. So this is a great way to get involved. It's 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. There's an RSVP link in the QR code over there as well. I would recommend if you come and just see how to get involved. I think it's a really great icebreaker and kind of just this way of getting involved that isn't necessarily high pressure, but you're able to see what the ACLU of Utah does, and a lot of our different partner organizations are going to be here as well. So it's not just the ACLU. If you're interested in another organization, you can come as well. I have this page here as well. So this is going to be the Stay Connected page. I have Allison, the community engagement director and my advisor. I have Riley, who is here as well, who is a community engagement associate. I have their emails there as well. I also have our socials, ACLU Utah, which Instagram is, I think, a really great place to get engaged with us. We actually had a really interesting case on book bans that I just read up on, which is, if you're really interested in seeing what's happening in Utah with book bans, definitely would recommend looking up and keeping updated with what ACLU of Utah is doing, especially our legal team. And we also have a website, acluutah.org. I also have my ACLU Utah email there as well if you ever want to email me about anything in terms of, hey, I love this Know Your Rights training. Can you do it for an organization that I have who usually doesn't get involved in voting and doesn't understand the accessibility of it? Perfect. Or hey, maybe you want to get involved in doing these trainings as well and you would want to know the next steps and you kind of had some questions. You can reach out to me or Allison for these questions as well. I'm going to put up the other one here, this one here as well. So I think the QR code is there as well for you to scan and get involved in. It's really great. Yeah, so overall, I just want to say voting rights is constantly changing. And I think the way it's changing is not necessarily how you would think, because we're not in an area in a day of age of, oh, who can vote and who can't vote, but we are in this day and age of what does the accessibility look like? What does voting actually look like in a standardized process? Your voting rights are actively being amended and changed it in some way to make sure that the accessibility is maybe a little bit more difficult. But not only that, it makes it difficult to understand when there's so many changes happening, right? You might feel overwhelmed as a college student of, hey, what am I supposed to do as a voter? What are these changes and how are they going to affect me? And in 2026, the legislative session, we'll see more. We'll see a lot of changes happen, but it's important that you just, one, be calm about this nature of changes. But not only that, there's a lot of protections that are already there from you on a local level, on a national level, which I talked about with the voting rights. And ultimately, there are nonprofit organizations like the ACLU of Utah to advocate for your voting rights. And I just want to make sure that that is clear, because what we are saying is only going to have changes that we want to make sure that you guys can understand. If we can understand these changes, we're able to make sure that people still can register to vote, which is our ultimate goal, and vote in the polls, right? That is our ultimate goal. We just want everyone who wants to vote and wants to put their voice out there, have that accessibility, and not make that change throughout the future. So that's really our goal here, and we really encourage you to join. Please get some tabling material things, stickers I always recommend for the water bottles. And yeah, thank you so much, you guys.
We can do Q&A, so I can pass around the mic. People want to raise their hands and ask questions.
Do you have any questions?
If there are not, one thing I think that Subham did so great was directing us to all the resources that you might need should a question come up down the road. When it comes to voting rights, voter engagement, sometimes you don't even know what you need to know until you need to know it in that moment, right? But I did want to ask, did any of our staffers from ACLU have any closing thoughts or words that you wanted to share with our students?
First, great job, Subham. Thank you. I think Subham covered it really well, that our goal is to make sure that the rights that are enshrined in the U.S. Constitution and the state constitution of Utah are protected for all people. The more you are informed about it, the more secure you are, and the more secure your community is. So stay informed, keep in touch with us. I would really encourage you to, you're part of, you're coming to the Hinckley Institute, you're involved in politics already, that mindset. Come to the legislative session with us. Come out, follow the link that was up before. Subham put up our call to action. sign up for that, and you can pick which issues you care about the most, so you're not blasted on everything, but maybe you want to hear about immigrant rights, maybe you want to hear about First Amendment. Follow that, sign up, and then we'll contact you to come out. We'll help you along the way. If you haven't ever given testimony, if you haven't contacted a legislator before, we can guide you through that process. Lots of materials, lots of support, and it's really important. Suvam talked about the percentage of the youth vote that is showing up at the polls is the lowest of all age groups. We need your voice out there. We need you active so that everybody's rights that are in the Constitution and the state of Utah are protected. So thanks for showing up. It's great to see so many people, and we look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you so much. And I really just want to say it's really important to engage as a student. I think it can be really easy to feel hopeless about a lot of different things and say, well, what does one person do? But really, I think it's about having conversations, about getting engaged, and thinking about what ways can we get more people active. And that starts with you individually, but it starts with your friends, your groups that you hang out with, and it goes from there. So if you think you don't have an impact as an individual, it's not true. On a local scale, you absolutely do. But not only that, one person can shape a lot of groups and a lot of different sort of messaging. And really what we want to do here at the ACLU is make sure that everyone is able to understand these issue areas and advocate for what they believe in. And we just want everyone to have that protection that is given to us by our Constitution. But not only that, make sure that we are keeping that up consistently. It's not just about having it once, it's about consistent effort.
One more, just wanted to say thank you to the Hinckley Institute for hosting us as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Any last questions before we wrap up? Okay, awesome. Let's give our guests one more round of applause. Thank you guys for coming. Feel free to stick around. There's still more food outside, so grab more food. And yeah, have a great rest of your day.